All right, now we are going to give a lecture by Stuart E. Guthrie titled Anthropological Theories of Religion. Introduction. Anthropological theories of religion are diverse. They are based variously on ideas, human, social structures, emotions, or cognition. Most concentrate on one of these, but some combine them. A few look beyond human nature to what other animals for analogues or precursors to religion. A few theories are indigenous to anthropology, but many have been borrowed. Thus, any review must be similarly wide-ranging and include material that is not solely anthropological. I offer a brief historical overview and a look at a promising contemporary approach. No sharp break or any single feature separates anthropological explanations of religion from their forebears or from those of other disciplines. However, a few common features do tend to set them apart. Of these, humanism, evolutionism, and cross-cultural comparison are primary. Humanism, in anthropology, means simply that explanations of religion, as of other human thought and action, are secular and naturalistic. They account for religions as products of human culture and human nature, not as manifestations of anything transcendental, supernatural, or otherwise sui generis. Darwinian evolutionism, the view that all forms of life are products of natural selection, is also basic to anthropology and somewhat distinguishes it from other disciplines that study religion. Evolutionism is unsurprising, of course, in biological anthropology, a major subfield, but even in cultural anthropology, founded shortly after Darwin, natural selection is foundational. Indeed, cultural evolutionism was the perspective with which anthropology started life. Partly in consequence, a search for origins and long-term trends characterized the early discipline and persists today. One such long-term trend, for example, is the tendency of stratified societies, unlike unstratified societies, to ascribe their moral systems to religious mandates. Another partial consequence of evolutionism is a degree of ostensible support for functionalism, the explanation of features of organisms and of societies by their positive effects. Thus, religion sometimes is explained, for example, by the social cohesion it is said to produce. The third and last principal feature of anthropological theory of religion is cross-cultural comparison. Although the comparative method was not original to anthropology, it has become especially pertinent there. In cross-cultural perspective, the ultimate object of study is not religion in any particular place or time, but religion everywhere and at all times. Such study reveals a gamut of beliefs and practices, almost to the exclusion of any common denominator. The variety seems to preclude ecumenism, as well as any shared perennial philosophy. Thus, issues of definition come to the fore. These issues are difficult even for scholars within the few relatively similar societies providing most of the anthropologists these days. When we try to compare religions globally, definition becomes both central and daunting. Arguably, this situation leads to further humanism, much as news of non-Western religions did in the Enlightenment. Darwinian evolutionism tends to lead in the same direction. Hence, these three features of anthropology are mutually reinforcing. Given the great variety of thoughts and actions called religion, and given that most languages do not have a word for it, the question arises whether religion is a universal concept. The answer, of course, depends on one's definition. The more abstract the definition, the more widespread that which it defines. If one accepts a definition as abstract as Tillich's, for example, Paul Tillich was a theologian, that religion is an engagement with some ultimate concern, then presumably people everywhere are religious, since all judge some concern more important than another concern. If, however, one stipulates belief in God or a supernatural deity, together with a morality sanctioned by an afterlife, then the religious are a smaller group. In any case, most anthropologists believe that religion may be defined broadly enough that it is virtually universal. A brief history. Anthropological theories of religion usefully may be divided into three groups: social solidarity, or social glue theories, wishful thinking theories, and intellectualist or cognitivist theories. Social solidarity theories take the needs of society as primary and explain religion by how it caters to them, especially by its supposed promotion of harmony and cohesion from a psychological standpoint. Wishful thinking theories take the emotions of individuals as primary and explain religion by its mitigation of negative feelings, such as fear and loneliness, and by its promotion of confidence or serenity. Finally, intellectualist theories take as primary the human need to comprehend or understand the world. In this last view, in the cognitivist or intellectualist theory, the religious interpretation of the world is first and foremost an attempt at understanding. It was our first attempt at trying to understand the world, and each of these three may be combined with either or both of the others. The social solidarity theory has been the principal approach in anthropology since the latter began in the late 19th century. It is a form of functionalism, since it explains religion by its nominal inculcation of allegiance to a society. Religion does this by symbolic means, displaying special clothing, architecture, song, dance, verbal formulae to augment communal feelings. Indeed, the social solidarity theory sometimes is called symbolism, meaning that it holds that religion is entirely a symbolic activity that does not engage the world as a whole, or as its performers or causal observers may think, but only human social relations. Its symbols may be covert and grasped only unconsciously. And of course, Jung was interested in symbols. He has a book called Man and His Symbols, which he talks about the importance of symbols and the collective unconscious. I don't want to go off on a rant there. Okay. Returning back to the text, that religious symbolism unifies society is not a new idea. In East Asia, for example, the use of religion by the state goes back at least to 1027 BCE, when the new Chou dynasty cited its conquest of subject peoples as a sign that it had received the mandate of heaven. And of course, we will study that in our Chinese history. Later dynasties continued the claim. So if you look back to China in the year 1027, 1027. See, that's for the Ming Dynasty. Before the Mongols. It's actually part of the Song Dynasty. But anyways, later dynasties continued the claim. In addition, they enlisted Confucius as a quasi-religious figure supporting the state, as did governments in Japan and Korea. Those are the dragons. In Japan, both Shinto and ancestor worship also were made to serve national unity. In the West as well, the social solidarity view and use of religion appeared early and has persisted to this day, starting at least with Polybius in the 1st century BCE. Again, he was a Roman historian in the Greco-Roman world. And then, of course, followed by Vico and Comte, for example, as well as Freud, among others. And most recently, Wilson and Rose and Raymond. Many scholars indeed have held that religion maintains the social order. The social glue theory, however, owes most to Durkheim. He was preoccupied with how societies cohere. He said that they do it largely through religion, which comprises beliefs and practices that are relative to sacred things, and which organizes followers into solitary groups. Sacred things need not include gods, however. For example, Buddhism is a religion without them, but they are anything representing the essential elements of society. Profane things, in contrast, constitute a residual category of all that is not sacred. The distinction that religion makes between sacred and profane is its signal characteristic. Relying on ethnographers of Australian Aboriginal religion, for example, Durkheim concluded that the chief object of worship for members of Australian clans, the totem, actually stands for the clan itself, and that it is the clan that is sacred. And of course, we know all about totem poles. Of course, the same principle holds for complex modern societies as well. The explicit object of worship, whether totem, flag, or god, represents all that is vital and hence sacred in society. Even nationalism and nation states can be a type of god or symbol unifying the whole. By formulating and expressing the sense that members of society have their mutual dependence, a feeling that otherwise is only sporadic, religion consolidates and augments that sense. This helps to make members behave ethically towards their fellows and rallies them to the society's defense. Even Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, who was imperator of Rome, unified the entire empire under the god Serapis. As to whether he believed in this god, this deity, he probably did not, and he probably didn't care. Just like Constantine, didn't really care about the schisms going on in the church or the Christians. He just wanted it solved. He wanted the place to be unified. Similarly, with Abraham Lincoln in the 19th century, he didn't really have a stance as opposed to whether or not slaves should be free or not. He just wanted the union to be preserved, and he wanted there to be union within the nation. Just as in Abraham Lincoln wanted union within the nation, so did Marcus Aurelius want union within the empire. And so it helps, and we see here from an anthropological perspective, it helps to make members behave ethically toward their fellows. It rallies them to the society's defense. Continuing on, the social solidarity of theory of religion has several strengths, principally that religions do appear often to have produced solidarity, and that leaders in varied societies have used this capacity. However, the theory has weaknesses as well. Durkheim's claim that religion's central feature is its dichotomy of sacred and profane, for example, met immediate objection from ethnographers who reported that no such distinction was made in the cultures they studied. Another problem is that if the claim that religions unite societies is to be more than the tautology that religions unite their own members, then one must show that they arise out of groups with some other basis, which the religion then strengthens. But in fact, there are many kinds of groups, families, villages, ethnic communities, states, that are split, not joined, by religion. A corollary is that, whereas social groupings allegedly are preserved by religion, many instead have been destroyed by it. Examples are the Taiping Tao of 2nd century China and the People's Temple at Jonestown. Finally, a problem for all functionalism must be addressed. Why is the feature, that of religion, adopted in the system, a society, that it benefits? Functionalists often ignore this question, or appear tacitly to endorse something like a Darwinian account, that societies with a given trait are more successful and therefore survive longer or spread wider. The trait survives with them. And of course, we could even look at this from a cultural standpoint. The more basic question of how the traits arise usually is ignored as well, however. And, of course, let's see. Randomness, though adequate to describe mutation, is an impoverished account of the genesis or the beginning of culture. 2. Much is known of human mental process to abandon it for blind chance. Moreover, cultural traits, unlike genetic ones, are not passed on biologically, but must be learned and often must actively be taught as well. Therefore, the question arises, what motivates people to teach or to learn particular doctrines or behavior? This question is sharpened by the fact that the people doing so often appear unaware of the social benefit attributed by the observer. In the case of religion, for example, few say they pray because it makes their society cohere. Of course, you might have to go to social psychology in order to understand that. The fact that functionalism via religion and other features of societies and organisms persist is due perhaps not to its strength under analysis, but to an intuitive but misleading appeal. This appeal is that functionalism jibes with the human proclivity noted at least since David Hume, and detailed experimentally by Kaliman, to define design and purpose in the world in a general sense. This proclivity, Kaliman shows, emerges spontaneously in young children. Clouds are for raining and remains powerful throughout life. She shows that this tendency readily takes a religious form. Some current religionists believe, for example, that they see an intelligent design that rivals evolutionism as a scientific account of biology. However, this belief seems to reveal more about human perceptual susceptibilities than that about biology. Of course, the social glue theory of Durkheim and others seems to founder on objections to a core concept, the sacred-profane distinction, on counterexamples in which religion is not a glue but a disparate, and finally on its failure to provide a credible dynamics of religion's genesis or origin and transmission. Although religion often welds groups together, and of course it may be deliberately used for that purpose, that is not why people adopt it. Moreover, religion often sunders groups as well. A second collection of theories may be called the wishful thinking approach. A little bit about the cohesion, or the what's called the social glue theory. A lot of times we just look at, for example, a lot of the schisms that happened in the church. Think of the Protestant Reformation and all the wars that go on between Shiite Muslims and Sunni, or that of Protestants and Catholics, for example. We will, and I forgot to mention the Crusades as well. But anyways, think about the wishful thinking approach too. According to these, religion serves as a palliative for human anxiety and discontent by imagining a more satisfactory condition in either the present or the future, by postulating a world in which we can better ourselves by appealing to gods, or in which life's suffering will be compensated by another life to come, or a better life to come. Religion makes life bearable. And these stories as well have an ancient lineage. Writers have noted that religiosity correlates with anxiety, at least since the time of Euripides' observation that stress leads us, because of our ignorance and uncertainty, to worship the gods. So even Euripides in the ancient world, right, said that religiosity correlates with anxiety, and that stress leads us, because of our ignorance and uncertainty, to worship the gods. Similarly, the first century, Diodorus Siculus wrote that disaster chastises us into a reverence for the gods. Spinoza as well, and Feuerbach, Marx, and the 20th century anthropologists Malinowski and Kluckhohn made comparable observations as well. The wishful thinking theories, or theorist, most widely read, however, doubtless is Sigmund Freud. Anthropologists following Freud include Gardner and Linton, Spiro, Wallace, and Lebert. As Freud is discussed elsewhere in this volume, I, however, shall describe his ideas only briefly. For Freud, religions are delusions, born from man's need to make his helplessness tolerable, and are illusions, fulfillments of the oldest, strongest, and most urgent wishes of humankind. Their particular features are projections of emotions and experiences. The notion of projection, however, is a misleading metaphor, probably based on a folk theory of vision as touching. Among other problems, it implies that there are two kinds of perception: projection, which is subjective and fallacious, and non-projective perception, which is objective and accurate. This implication is contradicted by the facts that all perception reflects the perceiver's interests and that there is no neural point of view. Many religions, moreover, fit any wish fulfillment theory very badly because they have features for which no one is likely to wish. The deities of some are cruel or angry and often complemented by devils or frightening ghosts. In others, however, the afterlife either is absent or very fleeting, or as a Hades or other unpleasant place, for example, hell. Such religions may threaten as much as they promise. As one anthropologist remarked, one could equally hold that religions afflict people with fears and anxieties from which they would otherwise be free. And on a personal note, I can tell you that a lot of religion is fed on fear, prejudice, and lies. Even if the balance of religious ideas tipped toward comfort rather than affliction, one would need to explain what makes them believable. We do not appear simply to believe whatever might comfort us. As Pinker, for example, notes, opposing the comfort theory of religion, people freezing to death do not seem to comfort themselves with the thought that they really are warm. And the third group of theories is called intellectualism or cognitivism, or occasionally neo-Taylorianism. These hold that religion is primarily an attempt at understanding the world and at acting in accordance with that understanding. One such theory led the earliest anthropological approaches to religion. For example, Taylor, who is classically humanistic, evolutionary, and comparative, describes religion as a universal attempt to explain certain puzzling human experiences. This theory, like the social solidarity and wishful thinking theories, has predecessors. Its comparativism and apparently its humanism date back to Xenophanes in the 6th century BCE, respectively, whose fragments report that humans formed their varied gods in their own varied images. Ethiopians, for example, make their gods black, whereas Thracians give theirs red hair. Much later, Spinoza and David Hume would form modern opinion on religion. They most closely anticipated Taylor in writing that popular religion at least consists in our attributing human characteristics to the non-human world in order to interpret our otherwise inscrutable surroundings. Of course, this was added to these early ideas an emphasis on cultural evolution, which, coupled with a more wide-ranging comparativism, strengthened the naturalistic view of religion as one more product of human mental activity. As a comparativist, he drew systematically on the reports of travelers, administrators, missionaries, and early ethnographers for descriptions of beliefs and practices around the world. In order to find a common denominator of religions, he saw differences in culture, including religion, as reflecting not genetics but forms of society, since a psychic unity of shared mental process exists among all humans. These emphases became part of the anthropological canon. And of course, he concluded that religion may be defined as animism, which is a belief in spirit beings, and that this belief arises universally from two experiences: dreams and the deaths of other people. Dreams, he said, everywhere are interpreted as visits from what is dreamed of. He termed the visitor for the phantom. Death, in contrast, almost everywhere is conceived of as the departure of something, the life. The phantom and the life, then, are conceived as a single thing, the spirit. Of course, this is a thin, unsubstantial human image, in its nature a sort of vapor, film, or shadow, the cause of life and thought in the individual it animates, independently possessing the personal consciousness and volition of its corporeal owner, past or present, capable of leaving the body far behind, of flash swiftly from place to place, mostly impalpable and invisible, yet also manifesting physical power, and especially appearing to men, waking or asleep, as a phantasm. Critics, however, soon charged Taylor with telling a just so story with little evidence either that the notions of phantom and life arise as he claimed that they do, or that the notion of the spirit being originates in their conjunction. Despite this broad ethnographic sources, his evidence of such a origin does not seem circumstantial. He also was charged, perhaps with some justification, with having turned ordinary people into philosophers concerned with explanation and with having slighted emotion. Still, other critics have noted that while a key assumption that he makes is that all deities are spirit beings and hence insubstantial, in fact, the deities of some religions are actually embodied and substantial. For example, think about the God of early Christianity, or the followers after the New Testament was written, or during that time. Taylor's thesis about dreams and death and his emphasis on religion as cognition were adopted by other anthropologists for a time, but then they were largely abandoned. His term animism has lived on, though, and its meaning is somewhat changed, whereas he meant by it a belief in any spirit beings, including monotheistic gods, for example. Current users mean belief in multiple spirits. Of course, Taylor's doctrine of the psychic unity of humankind also has survived as well. His view that religion should be understood as cognition reappeared in the middle of the 20th century with Robin Horton, and again from 1980 to the present in the work of varied writers drawing from cognitive science. And then in the next reading, we're going to talk about the views of Robin Horton. in contemporary thought.